this whole strike, it really isn't about the 1% in Hollywood, like the 1% actors. And that's the thing. You have to keep that in mind. The 1%. They're called the 1% for a reason.
Me being on TikTok, me being on Twitter, I've seen so many different actors and actresses that have been in things and they talked about it at length and been like, oh, I've been in this, I've been in that. And my residual check wasn't nothing but this. It wasn't nothing but that.
Most of these people in these actors guilds, and certainly most of the people in the writers guild, for damn sure, they not rich. Like they working people just like you and me, and they struggling to get by just like you and me. And what's disturbing is how many people have been brainwashed to just accept that you should just go to work and take whatever your boss gives you while your boss rakes in more and more money every year. And instead of getting mad at your boss, you getting mad at people that's asking for more. Like, you got to cut that shit out. Yo, what's poppin', everybody? It's the No Level Cap podcast. We back once again with the crew, talking about all the anime, all the gaming, all the nerd culture, none of the bullshit. Let me introduce y'all to my incredible co-host. We got the collector, the master of Twitch, Will Coleman. What's going on, Will?
Nothing much, my guy. I've been playing the Tekken 8 beta recently. It's going to be some growing pains with that one because new mechanics. It's going to be some growing pains with the new mechanics and so on. Netcode feels all right. Still need a little touch-up. But it's okay.
Is it rollback?
They got some stats and whatnot on the bottom right, and it feels better than 7. I will admit that. It feels better, but it still needs some work. And a good chunk of the player base.
We know what Harada said.
We know what he said.
It's back without the rolls. It's just back.
Basically at this point. But hey, it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's playing fine. I just need a good chunk of the player base to put a fucking Ethernet cable in. I'm tired of running into you Wi-Fi warriors.
Wi-Fi's, as I call them, the Wi-Fi's.
That's what's up. I'm glad you enjoy yourself so far, though. Next up, we got the Black Daredevil and the secret weapon of No Level Cap, Terrence Flowers. What's good, Terrence?
Hey, man. Week has been good. I can't complain too much. I'm definitely looking forward to tonight's topic, or today's topic, I guess, depending on whatever time you're listening to this. But yeah, things are good on my end, so I'm ready to jump on into it.
Sounds good. And we also got the living cartoon, the man with the golden voice, Rakeem Beck. What's going on, Rakeem?
Yo. Watch your anime and your video games. It's time for No Level Cap. Happy to be here, guys. Another day watching No Level Cap in our apartment. Hot as a mug because our air somehow went out again. Hopefully get that fixed this week. I'm really into the topic today. Something different. Something seems very important to multiple industries, not just one. So I think some levity and some detail and some information on this will be beneficial to a lot of people, and I'm happy to talk about it.
Lastly, I am Sage Ashford. If you didn't know, the No Level Cap podcast goes live every Monday morning. We're on YouTube for video fans, but if you prefer the audio version, we're live on Spotify as well. So as Rakeem kind of alluded to in his intro, I felt like we needed to talk about the idea of like this whole strike that's going on in Hollywood. It affects everything, really. And I mean, like, we seeing strikes go beyond just Hollywood at this point. Like, we starting to see strikes in other industries and shit like that. It's basically everywhere. And they're not just striking for better pay, but they also striking for something else that's been a big deal lately that we've been talking about off and on for like weeks now, with like this whole AI thing. Is getting kind of crazy out here. The Hollywood, they seen AI. As soon as like the Hollywood execs saw AI, they was like, we finally got the answer. They really thought it was Allen Iverson in this bitch, because they was like, yeah, we can get as much cheap labor as we want. It's like, all right, man, hey, back the fuck up. Like, let's chill out and figure out the best way to use this. They're like, yeah, we know the best way to use this to push y'all the fuck up out of here. And so like I saw that, I thought about it, like we had other topics to come up with and that we was gonna go over this week, but I couldn't get it out of my head. And I do want to thank Terrence, because Terrence came up with a lot of the questions here that we're gonna be talking about today. The great questions. So let's just go ahead and get into it. The first problem I have is, does it feel like to y'all the average person is just completely misunderstood these strikes and how they work? Like, because I'm seeing too much shit of like people going, oh, boo-hoo, the millionaires won't make another couple millions. And I'm like, bro, what the fuck are y'all on? Like, there's no way you think everybody in Hollywood is making $1 million or anywhere in that neighborhood. Terrence, how do you feel about it?
So I'll just say, for me, this is a topic that is not, well, I won't say like close to the chest, but it's like potentially close to the chest. Like I guess for future me, like depending on how far I go, like acting wise. But yeah, I mean, for our viewers, if you all don't know, I am an actor. I do on camera acting. I do voiceover as well. Still kind of like at like the lower level of things. Like I've done indie films and like student films and like indie voiceover projects. Nothing like big or anything like that, but you know, still on the come up. We trying. But yeah, this whole strike, it really isn't about the 1% in Hollywood, like the 1% actors. And that's the thing, you have to keep that in mind. The 1%. They're called the 1% for a reason. Most actors don't make like millions of dollars. Like the majority of people working in Hollywood are just working in the entertainment industry as actors. They're not making that much money. Just because one thing that you have to keep in mind, when you do acting, you're auditioning a lot. That's the bulk of your job right there, is that you're essentially interviewing every week or every month or whenever you get auditions. Let's say you get, 20 auditions a month. That's essentially 20 interviews that you're doing for one job. And that job is only going to go to one person. It's like any regular job where you have a bunch of people that interview for, let's say, like a position at Apple. Only one person can get that position despite how many applicants you have. If you don't get it, then you have to try for something else. That's just how that goes. And the same goes for acting, is a lot of people audition for the same role, but only one can get it. And as a result, your income is kind of unstable. You may book, like, let's say you book a co-star role, which a co-star is like somebody who has like maybe like 3 lines or so, maybe even less than that in a film or TV production. It's like people who are like the bartender who maybe goes up to like the main character and say, hey, can I get you something to eat or something like that? That's like a co-star. It's very basic. There's no like depth, quote unquote, to your character or anything like that. You're just there to move the scene along. If you do that one role, and then let's say maybe you do another co-star that year and that's all you book, that's it. Like as an actor, that's your only source of income in that case. That's why a lot of actors have other jobs, because they have to use that to support that acting income until they quote unquote make it. And so if these actors, as we know with a lot of the contracts right now for the screen actors, is that they're not getting residuals based on they're not getting enough residuals from streaming. And I'm trying to be brief about this because there's a lot to it, but I'm trying to just like give a very general overview. So if there's anything that you still have questions about, like, please feel free to do your research. It's all out there. But essentially actors don't get paid a lot from, they don't get residuals from streaming like that, because residuals really are, the rules for residuals now, they're really still based on TV. And as we all know, like cable TV, satellite, like that's kind of like on its way out. Like not that many people are using that anymore. Yeah, that's like old now. It's like most people are doing things through streaming. But the way these contracts work, they haven't caught up to that. So these actors that are working on these popular shows, whether it's like Stranger Things, I know there's stories about Orange is the New Black where actors from that, like that was one of the most popular shows on Netflix. And some of the actors from that talked about how the residual checks they got from that were like less than $100, which is insane. So yeah, the big misunderstanding that I think a lot of people, did you have something, Will?
Yeah, you mentioned Orange is the New Black.
Yeah.
First of all, love that show.
Yeah.
But messed around, was on TikTok one day, seen one of the ladies from the show, Kimiko Glenn. She posted
That's
about it on TikTok, and she went down the list. No less than $30. And I was just sitting there like, ain't no way you had this woman on this show for less than $30 on residuals. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. And so you have cases like that. So really it's just a matter of the contracts for this sort of thing. They need to be updated because the studios are reaping all these profits from these big shows, but the people who work on them, and this even isn't even just an actors thing. This is like people who are part of the crew, like your makeup, hair, stuff like that. They're not getting fair wages either. So it's one of those things where, yes, this is about the actors, and it's very easy when you think of actors, you think of like the people who are like on the billboards that are on like the poster covers and everything. Think like, why do they need no more money? This isn't really about them. But at the same time, they benefit from this because they're with the union, and because they're with the Screen Actors Guild, which is the actors union, they have to stand up for this as well, because this will affect them at some point. Like the AI stuff, which I know we're going to get into later, that's a problem in and of itself. Like the idea of taking an actor and like scanning their face and being able to use that whenever,
forever.
Like, yeah, that's another thing is, just the stuff that the AMTAP, I think I always get it wrong. It's AMTAP.
AMPTP.
Yeah, that's what it is. Which is the Alliance of Motion Pictures and something. You have to help me out on that, Sage, if you have it up. It's a long one. I forgot.
Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers.
There we go.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. But anyway, long story short, if this isn't about the 1% of actors, this is really about the common actor who isn't making that much money or may not book that many roles throughout the year. Because if you book maybe like one commercial or two like co-star roles and that's it for the year, that's your only income. And we're not even getting into like the fact that you need to make a certain amount in order to get healthcare benefits under the union. So
$26,000.
Yeah, $26,000. So imagine that as an actor, you're not even making $26,000 a year to get health insurance. That's absurd. So yeah, if you're misunderstanding this and think that this is to help out actors like, I don't know, Chris Evans or like Meryl Streep or those that are making millions, It really isn't. This isn't about them. This is helping the common actor who is on the come up that may eventually get to that point. But let's not forget that most actors don't get to that point. Most actors are kind of like at the lower tier or the mid tier. Very few reach that high tier. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. I'm sorry that was maybe longer than it need to be, but yeah.
Well, that was part of that is just you offering your experience and like the knowledge that you have, and that's very much appreciated because like we're obviously more on the novice end that don't know as much, and like so like somebody's got to tell us like to lay out a little bit of that to give us a little bit more runway so that we can discuss this.
Yeah.
Speaking of, Will, what do you think, man? Do you feel like the average person has misunderstood this, or like is it going over their heads?
Yeah, I honestly do, because a lot of it has been cases of, like Terrence mentioned, people thinking, oh, why do the millionaires need more money? Why are we feeding them? It's literally because they're looking at it in such a narrow focus. They're focusing on the people that they consistently see in movies throughout the decades or throughout the years. They're constantly thinking of familiar faces. They're not thinking of the people that they might have seen in the background, or that one person that had those 2 or 3 lines, or they may have only passed the screen maybe once or twice within like the first 10 minutes of a movie or a TV show. They don't think about those people. They just like, oh, they're just people they pulled off the street, give them a couple $100, a hot dog and a handshake, and they gone. That's what they think. So it really like kind of sucks to see people jump on it. Like people don't take the time out to read. Like I said before, when we talked about being reactionary to things, I've been at fault of doing that too. But when it came to this, I was like, I need to see what's up. And when it all came out, me being on TikTok, me being on Twitter, I've seen so many different actors and actresses that have been in things and they talked about it at length and been like, oh, I've been in this, I've been in that, and my residual check wasn't nothing but this, it wasn't nothing but that. Even an actor I seen, he was talking about something. He was like, I've been out here in Hollywood for a long time and I just been in numerous shows. I showed my brother one of my residual checks. It was number 27 cents. And he said, my brother laughed square in my face. And I'm just like, ain't none of this funny to me. And you laughing about my money that I'm not getting.
Wow.
So I'm just sitting here like, the average person doesn't get it because they're not in those shoes yet. And I feel like it's the same way with people on the outside looking in for a normal retail worker. You won't understand it till you wear those shoes and have to stand there for 8 hours. You won't understand it until you have to go and run your mouth to 20 different people, practice, be up on your feet all day long, learning lines and doing this and doing that to trying to get a role. You won't understand it till you do it. So as of right now, I truly think that the average person just will not get it or won't attempt to get it. They won't attempt to understand it. That's the better way to put it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of examples that you can see from actors online. I remember there was this one actor, I believe his name is Mark Proch. I like that. It stood out to me because it was like they said he made less in residuals from, and it's a popular Netflix show, What We Do in the Shadows, and he's like a main cast member, and he was like, yeah, I make less in residuals from that than like when I was on The Office, and he wasn't like a big character on The Office. I'm like, that's absurd.
Yeah, just
and
because
that's
The Office was on TV for so long.
right.
Yeah.
But it's like Netflix, that show is on right now.
Yeah.
And like he's a main cast member. Like, you can't tell me that you can't give me some more money off of being a main cast member on one of like Netflix's. I won't say it's one of their better shows. I don't really know. I'm not really watching it like that, but I do know that it's like super popular. And like, how are you gonna sit there and be like, oh well, we just not gonna cut no check for this? Like, what? And then like, never mind that. We talking about like they striking for like late pay. Like, apparently the studios don't even want to pay. Like, you imagine you went through all this work learning the lines, like making sure that you did your job, and then they can't even cut you a check. And like, I'm sure that happens at every level. Like, because the way I see it, if you're like a millionaire and they pay you late, you probably like, I mean, I get it. When I get it, it is what it is. Like, because you already got it. Like, if you already got money in the bank, you don't care. Like, just as long as I get paid, that's all that matters. But like, somebody that need that to pay their rent, like, can you imagine that they telling you, oh yeah, we get you, we'll get you on 90 days in. Like, 90 days, like, I've been did the job, like the show on. Like, what you talking about? That's nonsense. So like, as far as like people misunderstanding these strikes, I've seen this online, and I know there are people who think like this in real life too. Because I remember a long time ago, my uncle one time told me he stopped watching sports because he was like, the players went on strike, and he was like, they making too much money. Like, what's the issue? And it makes sense until you think about it. However much money you see sports stars or actors or whoever making, think about how much more money the owners are making. Like, the owners' money, to me, like, the owners having money, that don't mean shit to me. Like, I ain't come to see how much money I came to see somebody talented. And it's like, I came to see the actors act. I don't care what kind of check you cut. Like, you having the money does not impress me like the actors impress me. Like, yeah, you have to make some profit, but you don't need all the money. And that's without talking about how, so often some of these people aren't millionaires. That's not how money works. Like, I've seen people talk about, the thing when we talk about the health insurance, it's like, oh, well, if they aren't making enough money to get health insurance, then they should just quit. And that's ridiculous, because like, those actors, like, no show can just consist of top tier actors.
Yeah,
That's
somebody has to do those roles. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Those jobs have to be filled. And if they have to be filled, then those people need to be paid fairly. Like, this is not hard. And like, most of these people in these actors guilds, and certainly most of the people in the writers guild, for damn sure, they not rich. Like, they working people just like you and me, and they struggling to get by just like you and me. And what's disturbing is how many people have been brainwashed to just accept that you should just go to work and take whatever your boss gives you, while your boss rakes in more and more money every year. And instead of getting mad at your boss, you getting mad at people that's asking for more. Like, you got to cut that shit out. Like, you not only trying to hold them back, but you're holding yourself back. Like, you're not doing nobody no favor. So you got to cut that shit out. Rakeem, what do you think?
This is interesting to me because when I thought about this topic, it made a hallmark to me to a conversation of a controversial figure in a completely different industry, but one who wrestling fans will know. CM Punk talked about this 10 years ago. When he did an interview one day, and he talked about his issue with the then WWE Network streaming service. For those of you who don't know, in professional wrestling, they have pay-per-views where they would make certain, based on the pay-per-view buys, people on the card would get a part of the residuals from the pay-per-view buys. Well, many, many years ago, WWE created their own streaming service, which kind of cannibalized the pay-per-view business model. As a result, they kind of shifted to a new model, which is based on people just paying $10 a month and getting all the former pay-per-views for just a $10 monthly fee, like a Netflix or something like that. However, CM Punk brought up the fact, like, those residual checks we used to get, we don't get those anymore. What happened? And that was like kind of like the hallmark of what we're seeing now, a decade ago before streaming blew up to the point where it is now. That was just something I thought about coming to this topic. On the focus of like the layman person not understanding or getting the strike, that does not surprise me, because just like all of you, we've all had people in our families or people at work talk about they make too much money to complain. Why are they having issues? Oh man, you didn't get this. They've had movies about this. That's literally what the movie Replacements is about, where they villainize the football players and make the guys who come in the heroes. I want people to realize that media, television has a vested interest, in making people who strike the bad guys, to put pressure on them to quit the strike.
100%.
You're watching on television.
100.
Why would the television channel ever make the strikers look good? Why would your job ever want the union to have more power? It'll never happen. I mean, that's why union busting is a thing in itself. So like, yeah. And then on top of that, we kind of live in a culture, and it's sad to say it, but it's the truth. We live in a headline culture, not a deep dive culture. People look at the headlines, they see a general idea of the article, they see a general idea of what they see, and they're like, oh, they're just complaining. They don't really look into the issue further. And of course, like when it's a different industry, sometimes we have a hard time giving empathy for people in a completely different type of work environment, because we feel like we've worked hard all our lives to get where we are. They're complaining about what they have and they make more money than me. And what you guys have talked about before, that is not always the case. That's a fundamental misunderstanding of how that industry works, because you aren't willing to actually look out and understand that industry as a whole. What are you about to say, Sage?
Well, one thing to go along with that is that, you know, they look at the anytime you look at like creative shit or like
not real work.
Yeah,
YouTube,
they always
YouTube, Twitch,
Twitch,
athletes, all that shit. They be like, man, well, if you don't like it, go get a real job. They love that shit.
They love
man, suffer like the rest of us and not enjoying what you do. Basically, it's kind of like your kickback of like somebody making it and you didn't make it, so now you're kind of like upset about it. It's really sad. But yeah, I think that's a part of the main reason people are kind of like not understanding what's happening with the strike, or misunderstanding the strike, is that they don't want to look deeper into the industry because they don't care about the insides of the industry. All they care about is their product. It's kind of like when you go to a restaurant, you just want your burger. You don't care how the worker's being treated. Unfortunately, that's a real thing. Like some people do not care. They do not care how your day was. They do not care what happened to you. All they want is the product. They do not care about the person giving them the product. And that's just how business works, unfortunately, sometimes. And on top of that, like our society in general, we have this weird inclination to kind of like hate on anything that it weirdly enough that goes against the status quo, if it's not in our interest. If it's against the status quo and something we believe in, or like something we don't believe, if it's against the status quo or something we don't believe in, something we already hate, we tend to like hurrah it. But like when it's something that cuts close to the teeth or something we enjoy, television, sports, movies, things like that we consistently enjoy, and as a result of you trying to get better working conditions, we may have a lesser quality of that, we tend to try to strike out against it. It's just a mindset that goes against, I don't want to say humanity as a whole, but just like kind of goes against what you would think a regular person would do. But that's just the reality of it. Sometimes. But yeah, I remember I even have like in the back of my mind sometimes like, man, it's good these guys are striking, but man, TV finna suck for about 6 months. It's finna be booty cheeks.
Longer than that.
It's finna, oh boy.
Yeah. I mean, it's taking us back to what was the last writer strike in like 2008 or something? 07?
07, 08.
Yeah.
AKA the end of Heroes.
Yeah. Heroes was practically destroyed because of that strike.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of these shows that we have right now, they not gonna be. A lot of shows gonna get straight up canceled. Like if you a middling show, or if you like we not sure, they getting canceled. And then like the top tier shows, they don't do whatever they can to try to make it work, and those are gonna be bad for a season.
Yeah,
and
like Stranger Things, they're holding off right now. Like shoot, those poor actors, they're gonna be old by the time that season is finally done.
About to be Stranger Things too, all grown up.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, I mean, like I it's unfortunate because like TV is definitely gonna suck for a little bit, but I'm fine with that because like first off, I got other hobbies, but also like more importantly, like it's good that they need that better working condition. Like it don't do me any good for you to be working in like a shit condition. Like that don't help me at all. It's better, not just for me, but for like the world. If everybody has better working conditions.
And also, one thing that I'll add for context is the last time that the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, and the SAG union, the last time they struck together was in like the 60s. And at that point, they got residuals. And that was a big deal. So this is a big deal that this strike is happening. So hopefully by the time all this is over, it'll totally change the industry. So, yeah, this is going to be one to watch. So, yeah, definitely pay attention.
Speaking of changing the industry, man, now we got to get into it. This goddamn artificial intelligence. I gotta know how y'all feel about it. Like it's replacing. It seems like they trying to replace the creatives, man. Like, how do y'all feel about artificial intelligence trying to replace the creatives? How do you feel, Will?
It's weird for me. It's in such a weird little place. But I'll say it like this. I have a side of it that I like and a side of it that I don't. I like it because it can lead to like little funny comedic shit. Like, take like little skits and whatnot. I've seen people do them on TikTok with AI voices. I'm cool with like Resident Evil, like little skits between like Leon, Wesker, and all of them going to Whataburger at Chick-fil-A and arguing and talking about their food.
Not anymore. Right. I learned Spanish. It was fucking hysterical.
Yeah, like stuff like that I'm cool with, but then there's a side of it where it's like, I'm just like, okay, y'all kind of overstepping y'all boundaries, especially in the face of other things like, like getting their people's voices or making it even worse, or going to grab someone who is deceased, no longer here with us, and getting their voice and kind of spinning it to do something like, oh, that person, they last recorded this before this and that happened. I'm just like, don't do that, because I hate to see that type of thing happen.
The music industry been doing that for years.
Yeah, I know. The music, yeah, you're right, music industry. But I'm 50-50 on it. Like I said, if it's like for comedic purposes and just stuff you kind of do with your friends or whatever, sure, do it, but don't overstep your boundaries by throwing this stuff out there saying so-and-so said this or so-and-so did that, because at that point, there's probably defamation of character or some shit like that. So don't do that. But the other part I just don't like is that you can get into using someone's voice who's not here no longer. You can mess around and make them say something they didn't mean to say. That right there that's a whole other can of worms, because we talked about that once before about how that could affect political leanings and shit like that, political type shit. So,
oh my goodness,
shit like that could happen, and we know what. I ain't gonna say that last part, but I'm here to see the stupid shit. But if you start doing serious shit with it, or start taking dead people's voices and things like that, I have a huge problem with that.
Rakeem, how do you feel about all this AI stuff, man?
Man, I remember a few years ago, I took an interest in voice acting, and I was listening to an audiobook about voice acting. And while I was driving to work, and that's how I was driving, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, so I was kind of a little tired. I remember like listening to him, like, oh yeah, this AI thing might be going on. They'll never be able to perfectly replicate a human's emotion, but if they do, you might have to welcome your AI overlords. And that just I was like, that's weird to say, but now. The years have kind of gone by. I was like, whoa, that kind of stuck in my head. And I just remember that like it's kind of coming to a head now. I am very, 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 I feel very weird about AI. For one thing, I should have seen it coming years ago. I mean, for one thing, AI as a whole has been, moving on but years ago, many people, maybe online, maybe people in this podcast, if you've ever done like online little jobs, like these online websites do a little work, there was a big shift a few years ago into machine learning and AI tuning for like search engines and data and maps and stuff like that. And we were just like constantly like giving them information and giving them voices and reacting to voices. They had us basically people all over the globe, thousands of people training AI as part of their job, just as like a quick to make a few dollars for years and years and years and years and years and years. And it's finally kind of like come to a technology that's consistently been able to work, which, I mean, here and there, not every AI is like perfect and there's issues with it. But that's kind of like the background of what we're seeing now. That work back then has kind of led to what I'm seeing now. The reason I feel kind of weird about AI is like, Yeah, I have enjoyed, just like Will said, with like the little jokes and the voiceovers and AI imagery. But like a lot of the issues we're having with AI now is like the regulation of it and the understanding of it is still up in the air. People are still not quite, we don't know where it's going to be in a place where legality may be an issue because AI takes images and information from all over the internet and like compiles it into one thing, where you might be seeing AI art of Naruto, but it took images and partial images from real people's art all over the globe who won't see any, money off of them. People are trying to monetize that stuff. I see now that I've heard that people are starting to, think about making that legal and like that's kind of becoming an issue. But as a whole, until it's like a full regulation on this and how this is going to work, I'm very cautious about this. I'm weirdly enough, of all people, I remember even Elon Musk was like, we need to hold off on this AI stuff. We need to look back at this. Like when that dude said we need to hold off on it, I was like,
broken goddamn clock.
Twice a day. I mean, man, everybody, that's made my mind so like he kind of was thinking, even with the regular person was thinking like, yo, this could be a problem. Like I'm even scared of it to a degree, like with all the stuff that goes on in our society with like deep fakes, like a few years ago, how big deep fakes were and probably still are with like political stuff and like famous people and like, all types of stuff, their faces and voices being used for fake stuff and like getting them in trouble. I'm even thinking about like this stuff becomes so practical. This can happen to anybody. We have revenge porn. We can have revenge AI. You could have a crazy ex or somebody who don't like you and they just make it and like get some or pay somebody to do it and they just go out there and have your voice and your face and stuff like that saying and doing something stupid to get you in trouble. So that's why I kind of have some weird trepidation with that. And then of course with the industries that people are going into, acting and voice acting, music, art, things like that. Like companies, we know this. Companies, if they can save money without the human element, they'll cut it out every single time. If they can save money by using AI tools, they'll cut it out. And I mean, companies already have a bad track record with jumping on whatever the trend is. Anyway, what happened with NFTs like a year ago or 2 years ago? Man, they jumped on that. Every company in the world until people finally fought back against it. Every company in the world was trying to like just get on, hey, NFT games, NFT money, get on this blockchain. Hey, let's go. And that might
Square
be
Enix still trying to do the blockchain.
Exactly. And it's not a good idea now.
So fucking dumb for that.
And I think the only thing that can kind of stop the AI regulations, like just like with NFTs, we're gonna do the same thing with AI. Like, hey, until we figure this stuff out, till this is regulated and this is in a workable that doesn't kill multiple industries at once and plunge people into like losing their jobs, we need to really regulate this and put some controls on this. Because I mean, eventually, I feel like it's still going to be kind of normalized in the next few years because tech just advances. It's hard to just stop it. But maybe we can corral it or at least slow it down so people can, we as a society, kind of get an idea of what AI is going and we can kind of transition ourselves into it a little better. But that's kind of how I feel about it. I feel like there has to be a consenting voice for everyone to kind of like, hey, slow this down. Like your local politicians, federal politicians take this up. Hey, this AI thing might be an issue. Let's slow this down. Let's not let this stuff just roam wild forever. Slow this down. Let's get this regulated. Figure something out. Although, depending on where you are, your politicians might be talking about other stuff that has nothing to do with what you want.
Waste of time talking about bullshit.
Bullshit.
Talking about something that affects everybody.
Yes. So yeah, this is something that I think will affect people. And of course, the regular person might even be on their radar. They might look at the funny memes like, haha, that's funny. But like in a few years, like that AI might mess your industry up. So be cautious about this. Be concerned about this. Pay attention to it. Do some research and talk to people about it. Maybe if you could talk to your politicians and like, hey, let's get a bill, regulate this a little better, and let our society catch up to it.
Yeah, I think, this stuff is kind of scary, like when you really think about it. Right now we're talking about how it affects creatives, but this is why I said you got to get with your class solidarity. Like I have been concerned about AI and what it could do for like years now, but I kind of figured AI would take more menial jobs first, like the job like the I'm working at the Walmart or I'm working at the fast food spot. I figured they would take those kind of jobs and then maybe they might take lawyers later, like some lawyers, not all of them, but like there's certain basic lawyer jobs that you could take or certain basic medical jobs, like when it's the parts where you it's like, oh, we just need the definition. We don't need to like read into it and shit like that. I figured AI would kind of take those jobs first, and then like bigger jobs later. I thought creatives, to be honest, would be the last people AI would threaten because it's so hard to duplicate art and writing and shit like that. Turns out I was wrong. It's entirely backwards. They're starting with the creatives, but that could be a blessing of sorts because few other jobs are as prepared with a union to fight back against this stuff. Like there aren't that many. Like if it hit the service industry first, it'd just be people out of work and they couldn't fight back. It'd just be up for them. Please don't get it twisted. If you're passionate about art or writing and you think that we cannot be replaced, yes, we can. It isn't good, and it may not be good for 10 to 20 years, if ever. But here's the problem. It can be good enough. And that's enough for Hollywood to try and cut their biggest cost, which is every business's biggest cost, which is labor. They'll just decide that making a worse movie is good enough as long as they can turn a better profit. And like the worst and far more scary thing is that there are plenty of people for whom good enough is good enough. Like these are the people that don't have super exacting standards for movies and television and animation and shit. They don't notice all the cool camera shots that can only come from a top tier cinematographer. They don't notice the intentional imperfections that artists put in the artwork to give it a signature. They don't know and they don't care about none of that. All they care about is to be entertained, and good enough will entertain them. Like, I mean, it's obvious that that's the case. Like you look at anime, and like so many anime now, they turn out that it's just good enough, kind of. And, you know, you get mediocre shows. Not that there aren't top tier shows, Demon Slayer, Attack on Titan, Spy Family. You know, there are top tier shows, but like a lot of them shows is just like, it feel like AI making them damn shows already. They putting out these shows and it's like, damn, who the fuck made this bullshit? And, you know, that's still somehow good enough. There's still a whole audience of people that's just like, yeah, give me more of this generic isekai bullshit. Give me more of this I leveled up and became overpowered out of nowhere bullshit. Like, how many of those do you need? But people still want them. And
people do mess with them.
Exactly. So, like, don't fool yourself into thinking that people won't take some good enough movies and good enough television shows. They definitely will. We've seen it elsewhere. And I'm glad we're having this conversation now with, you know, like while the AI isn't good enough to like actually do the job and just come through and just be better at everything than we are. Because if we had it 5 or 10 years later, it might have taken so many jobs that it'd be too late. The real question is, and like Rakeem kind of alluded to this a little bit, how do you incorporate AI without it taking so many jobs? Because let me tell you something, AI is not going away. You know, you cannot put the genie back in the bottle. So we need to start figuring out how we can work with it so that it can make existing jobs easier instead of replacing those jobs. And yeah, you might need to talk to your congressperson. Tell them stop talking about that bullshit that they're talking about. Because I guarantee you, in a lot of states, and you know where you at if you in one of them, they talking about some bullshit and wasting time. And like there's stuff that affects your job. And if it's not affecting your job right now, in about 5 or 10 years, it will. But by the time it starts to affect it, it'll be too fucking late. Yeah. So, like, yeah, it's like right now is the time to have that conversation. And I do hate that it is like creatives that it's hurting, because it's not like creatives were getting they were already getting the short end of the stick to begin with. So I don't love the fact that it's like, oh, well, you know, also deal with the fact that we finna get a computer to come take your damn job. You know, they kick you in the butt, give you a watch, as Dusty Rhodes once said. And, you know, they tell you, get on out of here. You know, you did put your 20 years in, and we got a computer come take your job. Like, hard
times, daddy. Hard
times, daddy. You know, like, it sucks that we was already dealing with that. Now it's getting worse. But I mean, like, somebody got to deal with it. And at least it's like groups that have unions. Terrence, how do you feel about it?
Man, there's a lot that I have to say, but I'm definitely going to condense it as much as I can. For one, I agree with you, Sage, that AI isn't going anywhere. Like, yeah, the genie's out. There's no way that we could just get rid of it at this point. We have to evolve with it. But the thing is, the way I see AI is that it needs to be used as a tool that can help, like in terms of assisting you with the job that you have. It doesn't need to be the replacement for that job. That's the thing. Like, AI can be used, let's say, for example, with like animation. There's certain like mundane things with animation that every animator knows and just probably looks at it as like a pain to do. I'm sure AI can help with that. And if that's beneficial to the artist, to the animators without replacing them, then that's great. Same thing with, I don't know, let's say with gaming, where there's certain aspects of like coding that is annoying for game developers. AI may be able to help with that. And as long as it's used to, what are you gonna say?
They already have like procedural generation and stuff, so they kind of are using that a little bit.
And I believe some companies are already doing like AI tools to help animators. That's already in progress.
Yeah, but you see, that's what I mean is that when it's used as an assist instead of outright replacing the job, then that's fine. That's how I feel like it should be used. Because let's be honest, there's certain aspects to certain jobs that is mundane, and to have to use like regular human labor for it, it can get kind of taxing. And so if you do have a program that can help with that sort of thing, and it doesn't have like any like outright flaws or like screws anything up, then that is a good thing. However, the way that AI is being used right now, it's on its way to replacing a lot of these jobs. And this affects a lot of industries. Like for one, art. The fact that you mentioned, Sage, is that for a lot of people now, good enough can be just good enough. I've seen a lot of AI art going around, even though there's memes about AI art with like the multiple fingers on hands and stuff that's like incorrect. For a lot of people, that's okay. I've seen
some of it, even like I'm getting to the point where I'm looking at the art and I immediately see it and I'm like, this is AI art. And at first I was like, it kind of looks good, but eventually I was like, this shit looks generic as a motherfucker.
Yeah. But it has no soul.
Yeah, but give it like another year or two, it's gonna get there. That's the thing. It's like, it may be fun to make fun of now, but give it some time, it's gonna get to the point where it's indistinguishable. Especially to like older people who may not be able to differentiate that sort of thing to begin with. It's gonna be especially hard for them. So you have art where that's already affected, and so people see it that they can just, if people see that they can just use AI to come up with art without having to actually hire an artist to do it, like pay them, like the artist take the time to draw the concept, it goes to you, you look at it and you approve it, then you go back to them. If they think like, oh, that's a waste of time, I'll just type in, I don't know, anime girl with cat ears doing a funny pose, and the AI just spits that out in 5 seconds, they're gonna be like, all right, well, this is cool, I'll take that. And they're gonna say like, going to an artist, why would I do that? So that is an issue right there in and of itself. With voiceover, man, I'll say this, that I've been on YouTube and I've seen like the funny videos with the voices from like SpongeBob or any other animated property being used. And man, it's crazy to see how many of those covers on YouTube now. They have Plankton singing like Aerosmith songs, and it is wild how I made a tweet at the beginning of this year saying like AI might be the biggest enemy of 2023. I did not realize how true that might be. The fact that you can have like this whole catalog of SpongeBob, you can take the voices from that, and pretty much now it's almost perfect. You can kind of tell when it's the AI, just because there's certain things that the AI can't quite replicate that well, but it's close enough. Like, it's to the point where you can have SpongeBob say any old thing, Patrick, Mr. Krabs. It's crazy. And the scary thing about that is, because these characters are brought to life by real people, and you can have AI replicate potentially their voice, it could make it where for voiceover, they may not need that person to do it anymore in the future. And that is a scary thing for voiceover. There's a lot of voiceover artists right now who are really scared, just because there's also contracts coming out where if you do work with certain clients, you have to look at your contract carefully, because they may have it in there where it says, we can upload this to like an AI site for storage that we may use for later, where they could just use your voice for any old thing and you're not going to get compensated for it. And as a voiceover artist, your face already isn't seen, so it's just your voice, and people aren't going to care that much about it. And so for a lot of voiceover artists, this is a very scary time, just because the idea that they can just take your voice and do whatever with it, it could potentially put them out of a job faster than anyone else. And that's definitely terrifying. With games, I mean, the fact that we talked about, they have AI that can do coding, who knows? It may get to a point where AI can just make a game on its own, and you won't need a person at the keyboard putting their own twist on things anymore. So that's
That's
a really
not even far-fetched.
It kind of is, but because like video game, like coding is so much more difficult than we think. Like
definitely.
that's why a lot
Oh,
of
it
programmers
is.
will say that it's an art rather than like a science.
Yeah.
And that's
Makes
why
sense.
you like that's why you never really get like firm release dates. They have no idea because they're like, I don't know, we might run into a coding problem and be stuck. But as much as I'm like, nah, they can't do that. I'm like, man, I thought they couldn't replace artists and writers. I'm already wrong, so I'm not gonna try to go 0 for 2.
And I
Like,
think
I
about
hope
like I think about like the asset stores and things like that. Like if AI could get attached to like the asset stores and like distribute assets a certain way, and then like you can do the AI writing and do a plot line, and like man, you might have like boxes and story and everything.
Yeah,
They
Chat
might be
GPT. The
trash.
fact that people can now use Chat GPT to write essays and stuff for school, they're already in colleges. Like they're already having to
allowing it.
put that into their
The syllabus.
the honor code.
Well, the problem
that
is
too.
the problem is like they have like the little tools to find out if you like use Chat GPT and the tools don't work.
Yeah. No, there's actually been cases where I remember hearing about one where a professor said, oh, this was clearly written by AI. And the student said, no, it wasn't. But he still failed them because he thought it was so. And so, like I said, it's getting to the point where people are not going to be able to differentiate. It's getting wild out there. And to bring it full circle back to the actor strike, the one last thing that I'll bring up is one of the scary parts that was a part of the whole deal with SAG and the Motion Pictures Alliance is that the Motion Pictures Alliance, they essentially wanted to scan the faces of background actors, pay them for half a day, and use their face in perpetuity, which means forever. And as an actor, you never want to do anything in perpetuity because that means you do it one time, they can use that forever. You will never see another cent from that as long as you live.
Crazy.
And so, yeah, and if you think about it, a lot of actors get their start as background. I've done background.
Right.
A lot of your favorite actors, they started off doing background just because that's a great way to get on-set experience. Can you imagine if, I don't know, Scarlett Johansson, if she did background years ago and at that time they had the AI technology and they scanned her face and was able to just use it forever? She might not be able to audition for future stuff anymore just because the studios can be like, oh, well, we already own your image, so we don't need you. We don't want to see you in anything else just because we already have you and we can just plaster you up in the background. That's a very, very scary thought just because that one time that you're paid for something and your face is scanned and they use it forever, you may be out of a job forever. So that's
Not just that, but like we could take this to another level. Like you could have effectively like you could get a certain number of background shots and then just reuse those in films and TV shows just over and over. And so not only is it screwing over the people they scanned the first time, but it's screwing over future people who just never get that opportunity again.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it is that, if they do a lot of the scanning that they wanted to do, then people are going to be screwed out of money and future opportunities. And like you said, future generations of actors will have problems getting jobs just because it's like, we already have like 1,000 faces that we can use. We'll just
2023 and then, it's 2043. Like we still using that. Like,
yeah, exactly. So AI
people don't even dress like that no more.
If used as a tool can be helpful, but that's the thing. It just needs to be used as a tool. It can't be a replacement for these jobs or for people. That's my thought process on it, is that we just somehow we need regulations on this stuff. And knowing how Congress is, like, look how embarrassing the whole TikTok hearing was.
Oh my goodness.
I don't have faith in them doing anything with this until they're like forced to. So we're going to have to see how this whole AI stuff rides out for the rest of this decade. Hopefully it doesn't take us to doomland. I'll put it that way.
I know, right? I hope it don't.
Okay, so the last question I want to do before we wrap it up is like, I feel like the one thing that's working in the favor of both the writers and the actors is the fact that they have the unions. And so I'm wondering, how do y'all feel? Like, do y'all feel like we should see more creative industries start to try to do like unions? Because like, it's definitely necessary to gaming, and there's been like a lot of pushback. I've seen pushback, but I mean, like, there was hella pushback over in gaming. there's hella pushback whenever you see a new union try to pop up. Like Rakeem said, like these businesses, they don't want that. They want you to negotiate by yourself so they can tell you to fuck off. They don't want to have to deal with like 50 people or 500 people or how many employees they have. They don't want to deal with that. They want you to be like, hey, bro, I want a better pay. And they be like, no, and get out or I'll fire you. So, I'll ask Rakeem first, like, how do you feel about this whole union thing? And like, would you want to see more creative industries unionize, even if that meant like maybe we get games slower because it takes longer for games to come out?
So this is interesting for me because I've been a part of companies that have had unions and companies that were literally you can't get hired if you have to sign a contract that you will never join a union. So this has always been this is a thing. Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is. Yeah.
I mean, it definitely. Because I mean, like when you join a lot of companies, either they tell you can't join a union, which is actually illegal, I believe.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I was thinking, it is illegal, but yeah, they do. They do it.
And then like some retail companies will have you watch videos about the evils of unions, basically. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, there are more positive negatives than unions. There are some negatives with unions depending on what type of union you're in and like how they get stuff done and like, whether it benefits everybody or whatever, but that's a whole different discussion. I think creative industries and unionization is always a good thing because we've seen how far it can skew on the other side of that foot. I like to bring up professional wrestling because I'm a professional wrestling fan. That industry tried to unionize multiple times over multiple decades.
And Hulk Hogan sold them out.
And it'll be somebody sell them out or like they never get everybody together on it. The companies will always demonize people to not do it, or like one company will pay really well so you don't join a union, or they'll do different things for individuals so they won't support a union on their behalf. And the problem is like it has to be everybody. And I mean, in any industry, it has to be the people at the top and the bottom, people in positions of power and the regular layman who does the everyday work to join a union. Because if you don't get that parity between everyone, there will always be a disparity where people aren't going to be able to benefit from it. If everybody doesn't buy into the union mindset and the benefits of it, it will never work. And of course, like they'll play you against each other. They'll demonize the union. They'll make it seem very negative. And like I talked about earlier, companies are in a vested interest to do everything in their power to make sure you don't join a union because it takes power out of their hands and gives it to you. I mean, we've seen what happens in like some industries where it does happen. Like we talked about, like in sports world, you can kind of tell like the unions of the NBA are very different from every other sports union. They have a lot more power and like they negotiate at a completely different level to other sports unions that should have similar benefits for positive and negative. Sometimes, it can be kind of iffy.
Well, I was just thinking like baseball's union is technically better than the NBA's because they get whatever basically.
Well, that's true. But I mean, every industry is going to be a little different, and over time it depends on like how they grow, the amounts they're getting, and of course, at the end of the day, the company's always going to make more money than people who work for them, no matter how they unionize. It's just going to work.
Kind of, because I think the NBA gets like half. That's how strong they are. They get like half the profit. They do get half, which is crazy. But I'm cool with it. Hey, they the ones to do the work. If you do the work, you should get paid for it. But yeah, going back to the original question, I think unionization is becoming a point like not if, it's like you almost have to now. If people can just take your jobs away at any point, why are you protecting them and not protecting yourself? I mean, at the end of the day, that's the one right there.
And I mean, as a person who has been laid off before, and and now luckily I was part of a company that had a very good layoff package, and I was benefited and taken care of. But not every industry does that. Some people get nothing. Absolutely nothing. To put 19 years into something 1 year before retirement, you lost that year, good luck. That can happen to you. And they told you years and years ago how bad a union was. Well, if you had a union, maybe that wouldn't have worked out the same way. You could have negotiated a better rate so how you got fired, or like I know in other countries, was it like Japan or something like that, or China, it's very difficult to get fired.
Yes.
Because of how they negotiated their contracts and unions and things like that. Like that's how you have to work towards it. And I think another thing is like, one thing that has to change in every industry, creative and uncreative, we have to stop worrying about the next person and think about what we're getting collectively. Because when you worry about the next person too much, you kind of get like you backbite. Your mind gets so negative, and like you don't think about the bigger picture. Sometimes you think about the bigger picture outside of yourself, and it happens to everybody. It can happen, you know. To me, I've seen, you know, I've bought into the Kool-Aid about, oh man, unions are so bad. Then I've seen what happens when you don't have one. It's like not having insurance. You think insurance is a scam until you have an accident.
Yeah.
Until you really need it.
Yeah,
And then you're like, oh, it's a scam. But it's a scam I'm buying into because the cost is way too high.
That's a good way of putting
Facts.
it.
Super good way of putting it.
But yeah, long story short, though, because I don't want to ramble too long, I do think more creative industries need to buy into the unions because at the end of the day, the companies will always have the most power. You just have to empower yourself to kind of get yourself to the table and fight back against their BS. If you don't put up with BS with people on the street, you don't put up with BS with people in your household, you don't put up with BS from your spouse, you don't put up with BS from your kids, you don't put up with BS from your friends. Why would you put up with BS from a company that tells you what to do?
Yeah.
Factual.
That's very, very well summed up.
Factuals.
Factual. I feel like everybody should unionize, and it's not just creative industries. Like, I don't talk about it a lot. I work for a news media site. I do articles, but that site is owned by a massive company that's bought hella other websites. And when that happens, like in any kind of industry where there's a lot of consolidation, what that means they get to do is they get to decide what fair pay is, and then they get to tell you what competitive rates are, even though they're not actually competing with anybody. That's why I said class solidarity was important, because the writers are striking, then suddenly the actors are striking. Now we're hearing about UPS potentially striking. Soon the Teamsters are going to strike if they don't get what they want. That's how it should be. Like, the billionaires during the pandemic somehow got richer, and everybody else was out here struggling. Everyone in every industry is somehow always behind the 8 ball when it comes to getting paid, except the people at the top. Like, we did the fight for 15 when I was in my 20s. I'm 35 now. They never even raised minimum wage. By now, it should be like the hell no. By now, it should be
$7.25 technically.
The federal minimum wage is still $7.25, and there are lots of jobs. I think there's over 100,000 jobs that pay $7.25 an hour. Like, that's not a lot in the grand scheme of things, but that's way too many jobs.
The only ones that raised them were just companies that just decided to do it.
Yeah.
They just decided to do it.
The fact that we still talking about the fight for 15, like, at this point, it should be the fight for 20. Instead, they'll give us like $12 and tell us to stop being greedy. Like, the biggest problem right now is that we don't have enough unions. Like, you look at animators in Japan, and they barely get paid enough to live. Like, they create some of the most culturally relevant stuff at the top levels, and yet so many of them are overworked and underpaid. They do it out of love, which sucks because the industry that they're in is incapable of loving them back. Like, I mean, like, I remember not too long ago on Twitter, they had this hashtag, comics will break your heart. And it was just people talking about how hard they had worked trying to get comics to just, like, trying to work in comics and get, like, an industry, like, and, like, make a living out of comics. And, like, so often the stories just ended in heartbreak. And eventually the people had to go and find some other job outside the industry because it just wasn't going to love them back. It wasn't going to give them what they had put in. And that fucking sucks. Like, there should be no reason why you have to hold down multiple jobs just to pay the bills when you operate in certain creative industries. You shouldn't have to work 50 hours or 50 plus hours a week. We didn't normalize this hustle culture, and what's actually happening is that we hustling backwards. Like, people got out in the 1900s and fought for weekends off. They fought for 8 hours to work, 8 hours to sleep, 8 hours to play. And instead, what you do, like, you didn't hold yourself. You screwed yourself. And now you like, oh, well, we got to go up in here and, you know, work for these horrible conditions. And then you want to tell yourself you don't need a union? No. We all need them. Like, and not just us, not just like, oh, you know, if you work in a creative industry, not just actors, not just the directors and then the writers, like, congratulations to them that they have them. And, like, the idea, like Keem said, like, you can't be backbiting and looking at like, oh, well, they got this, and, you know, they'll be all right, and then they should be happy with what they got. Like, no, like, they should be happy with what they got. Now, them billionaires should be happy with what they got, and like cut everybody else into the pile a little bit more. Like, this is ridiculous. Terrence, how do you feel, man?
I essentially agree with what you and Rakeem are saying, is that, yeah, more unions definitely, I mean, more industries could definitely stand to unionize. How we go about that, man, That's a big conversation.
big
Just
question.
because
That's a big uptaking.
you really need, like you all have said, you need solidarity on it. And that's where I will give credit to the Writers Guild and SAG, is that they're in solidarity. They voted on the strike, and the Motion Pictures Alliance did not, the negotiations didn't go well. So they voted to strike, and it happened, which is the way that it should work when you unionize. Now, these other industries, like you mentioned the animation industry, or specifically anime, Sage, and I mean, that's one of those things where, since that's in a whole other country and I have no idea how unions work in Japan, I don't know how easy it is, or if it even is possible for workers in Japan to unionize like that. I think they should, just because, like you said, Sage, anime is bigger than it's ever been. Like, the profits that anime rakes in now, it's insane. And the fact that the people who actually make that stuff, the animators, the producer, well, not necessarily producers, but yeah, like the animators, the people more at like the lower levels actually creating it, the fact that they don't get paid well for it, the fact they have to work so many long hours, and from season to season, they're just going from show to show. I'm looking at you, Mappa, like, and they're not getting compensated for all that.
I don't see how they do that.
Man,
slave labor, damn near. That's,
yeah.
I mean, like they working for peanuts and breaking their backs, doing all this fucking work, doing all it. And it is like, that is one of those things. Like, I think about it and I'm like, I don't know how possible that is in Japan, but it is like possible or not. Like, they need something, because like the fact that you have to like scrimp and work so hard to get nothing. I'm like, nah, that's not right.
And here's the flip side of it, is that if you do get the whole thing with solidarity to unionize, is you have to make it where people aren't going to like backstab you with it, because that's one of the problems. That's one of the big things that's being discussed with the Writers Guild and the SAG strike, is that people, they've been telling people, hey, don't scab during this. Like, if you want to join the union in the future, don't go work for those struck companies. Don't go work for those struck companies. And that's the same thing with animation, is if you have a certain number of animators that agree to strike and try and unionize, but yet you have some behind the scenes that are like, well, maybe I can use this opportunity as a little bit of a come up. Like, I'll go work for those studios, they'll recognize me, and then I can get all the accolades. And it's like, no, that's not how that works. Like, you can't be backstabbing or like scabbing with this kind of stuff. Like, everybody needs to stand in solidarity against the company, because anyone who goes and does work for that company while the other people are striking, that you're hurting yourself, because not only
in the long run, like you can't fill in the need with scabs.
Yeah.
So like eventually they're going to have to, like, both sides are going to have to come to the table and agree on something.
Yeah.
And once they do, if you scabbing, that's it for you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you're just hurting yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
So I do agree that more like anime, it could definitely stand to unionize, whether it's the writers, the translators, or even like the animators. Like, yeah, they could all stand to be a part of a union. With gaming, I know that that's been talked about before. When there was the voiceover strike years ago, there was talk about like, oh, well, we know that the actors, they want more money, but what about the people who make the games? Yes. Yeah, they should strike too. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. People acting like, people acting like that was some kind of gotcha or something. It's like, no, yeah, they should strike as well, because they deserve better pay. So it's like, yeah, there's so many of these creative outlets that, yeah, they should strike. Now, the logistics of it or getting the solidarity for it, that's a whole other thing. So while it's hopeful to want them to, all these industry, to unionize, will it actually happen? I don't know. Time will tell, but hopefully everybody will get on like the right side of history and force these companies to actually pay them more. So we'll see.
If the question is, will it happen? The answer is no. Because like, I'm sorry. Like I'm to the point now where, cause like it is too much of this, like the inability to get on the same page. Like it's just going to be, and that's without getting to the fact that like these companies are going to fight you tooth and nail.
Oh yeah, they definitely
Like,
have the resources to do so.
They will.
Yeah, because the thing is, that's the dangerous thing about it, is that while you're struck, you can't work. Well, you can't work in that industry. You have to go do something else. So the companies literally have the ability to outweight you, and that's a huge part of it.
They said that.
Yeah.
They said that when the writers struck, they were like, yeah, really the plan is we ain't giving them shit. What we gonna do is wait until they fucking broke and come begging, and then we'll just give them a little fuck ass deal, and that's just gonna be
Which,
it. Like
that is so straight up evil. That's so cartoonishly
That
evil.
is.
Like, I don't know how anyone can defend that. Like, if you're defending that, you're scum. That's not how I
Downright
feel about it.
bastard.
Sometimes you just say the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
that's exactly. I mean, like they
That is
didn't
true.
say who said it, but like somebody that was an exec
Somebody
said
said
that
it.
shit, and like the writers was like, oh, bet. Well, we'll just like you're not finna hold. And like the reality is, they losing more money than like. I think by now they've lost more money than the whole thing is worth. And so it's just like, all right, well, you're just being petty. Like, just take your L, sign a new contract, give these people it's not like they're asking for unreasonable shit.
Yeah.
Like, that would be one thing, but they're not asking for that. They're asking for stuff like, hey, man, it'd be nice if we had like health insurance. Well, yeah, I mean, it would be nice. Like, why can't they have that? Like,
I know.
that's, like, oh, hey, man, maybe don't take my identity effectively and then like make it impossible for me to get, any kind of work in the industry ever again. Like, yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. And the fact that somebody's fighting against it, you like, bro, what kind of evil shit? So like, I'm not really surprised that they said that, like, hey man, we just gonna try to starve them out. Like, cause the shit you want to do, the shit you implying is already evil. Like, like one of the things on that list, because like Terrence gave us a list of like the demands from like the Screen Actors Guild, I believe. And one of them was like, hey man, stop paying us late. And I'm like, yeah, that's like
that's so simple.
You go to work and it's like, I expect to be paid within a reasonable time. Like I'm as a writer, like not like top tier, but like as a writer, I get paid, and I understand like the idea of like net 30, which is when you get paid 30 days after like whatever you submitted. I understand the concept of that, but like once you start getting into like net 45 and net 90 and net 120, I mean, if you get that shit out of here, like this is a line that has caused many a thing, like many a person to like change the way they live life. Rent is due every month.
Yeah.
Like I got bills to pay, like, and like it makes you feel like you're not working a real job when like you can't get paid for the work that you did. It makes you feel like, well, damn, this shit, I guess it ain't I guess I do need to go find a real job, because like I'm not getting paid for the shit that I'm doing. So like it's all ridiculous. Like, and so like I'm definitely with this idea of like people unionizing. Like, Will, I want you to wrap it up. Like, tell me, like, do you see a way that, like, do you see like the idea like creative industries like fighting back? Do you see a way forward for them?
You definitely said what I was thinking earlier, where you said where I feel like a lot of people aren't going to get on the same page, but I feel like they can. It's just going to take a lot of frustration. Yeah. It's going to take a lot of getting upset, a lot of yelling, a lot of barking, a lot of seeing that man you can't stand. I guarantee you, it's going to take a lot of that. And to add on to something that Terrence talked about earlier with Japan and the unions and the animation studios and whatnot, I'm not going to talk about that industry per se, but I will talk about something that I feel might as well be its own industry, the salaryman industry. I learned recently that in the salaryman industry, as I'm going to call it, when you're working at these companies, if they feel like you're not doing enough, they will put you off, but not necessarily put you off the job. They will keep you there, but they won't give you nothing to do. Basically call you like a window watcher or a window viewer, and you just there. They basically kind of put you there to be like, damn, well, if I ain't doing nothing, I might as well just leave the job. They want you to
quit,
you out.
And they basically try to make you quit out of shame, because like you basically work there, and I'm like, man, that can only work in Japan, because if you did that here, like I'd be like, I'm gonna watch these windows, buddy.
I'm still gonna watch these windows. Talk to him, King. What's up?
Man, there's an entire episode of Seinfeld about that, where the character George Costanza, he worked for like, I think a baseball team, like the Brooklyn Dodgers or whatever. I can't remember if it was the Dodgers or whatever team he worked for. He worked in the office staff, not for the team itself. And he did something where they wanted him to quit, but the window of time in which he had his contract filled out, they couldn't force him out. And they did everything. It's so funny. They did everything in their power to get him out. They like boarded his door to his office. He just snuck in through a vent or the back or the window. And like they took all the stuff out. They put names on it. They talked trash to the dude. They wouldn't talk to him, and he just kept coming to work like, you can't fire me. every day.
That sounds like just
I'm
some
here.
passive aggressive bullshit.
Exactly.
It really
That's
is.
basically
Honestly,
what you're
that's
talking
exactly
about.
what that is. But
That's
yeah,
reminding me of.
yeah. Honestly, there's a way, but it's gonna take a lot of pent up frustration from workers, from like basically from ground floor to like even mid level. It's gonna take a lot of frustration for people to be like, "Hey, look, I need my money." And like you said, rent is due every month. These bills are due every month. If I cannot live, I have problems with everyone up top. I'll be coming for them before I even leave this job. So I expect to see more unions pop up. I expect to see them do their thing, especially in every single one of these sectors we mentioned. I want that to happen. I want to see that happen because these people deserve that. They're just like me, you, and you. All of us on this podcast, we have things we have to do. We got bills we got to pay. We got things we need to do. Just like actors, they got to do it. These unions will happen. They will rise up.
in fairness, even though I said I don't really believe it, there are signs of like unions showing up in certain areas. I think Amazon, you have like some certain like Amazon areas.
I think New York. I think they got the first union going up there. I think.
Man,
New York.
If there's, can't nobody tell me on this planet Earth the Amazon need a union. If there's any company need a union, it's as people we know personally have been really affected by Amazon, and that's something I'll stand on. They need a union because that's some bull crap. People we know personally have had their lives messed up by Amazon's working condition, and I do not mess around with that shit.
I mean, it's one of those things where like you look at how they used to treat workers back in like the 1900s and shit, and it's like the reason why they stopped was because of unions. And rest assured, like as they busted unions and changed jobs so that it's like, oh well, we don't need a union for this and we don't have a union for this. Like once they realized, oh, we can go back to doing some of that same bullshit, they went back to it. Like they went back to some of that same nonsense they did back in the 1900s, and they like because they know they can get away with it. And so yeah, it's the idea of seeing unions start to pop up. I'm like, good. What's up, Will?
I was gonna say the one way I would really like to truly round this out, in the case of this union thing, the best way to really put it, history will find a way to repeat itself. That's the best way to put it, really. And I hate to see it. I hate to see it on both the bad and I hate to see it on the bad side. I would hope to see it more on the good side, but history will find a way to repeat itself. It will somehow, some way.
I can only hope that it's more the good than the bad.
You and I both.
You know, like because there were a lot of bad had to happen for people to finally be like getting on the same page and being like, all right, look, we ain't got to worry. We can't worry about what the next man got. We trying to worry about us right now. Like it take a lot of that. So I do want to be positive about it though. So
yes.
But I think that's going to wrap up this week's episode. If you liked it, I need a few things from you. I need you to do us a favor, hit that subscription button on YouTube. I need you to follow us on Twitter and TikTok. I need you to tell everybody that you know. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers you don't know. You might make a new friend. And I need you to do me a personal favor and have an excellent week. Peace.